Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod once again. Boy, the All Blacks performance on the weekend has got a few people riled up, and probably as they should be, because it was pretty average, to be fair, and going down to Argentina is not what is expected in New Zealand at all. So of course we'll be getting into absolutely all of that. How it happened, what are the solutions, and how will the All Blacks go from there? Of course, on the other side of the Tasman, we saw the Springboks look $1 million, using some new guns and some old guns, and they're placing the Rugby Championship at the top. Looks all but assured early on. You've got to think, of course, plenty to talk about there as well. A big focus on your comments. We've had some YouTube comments this week, I'll tell you what. We've had some emails come through this week as well. Plenty of people wanting to talk All Blacks from all around the world with us. So let's get into that. Special guest in studio. So good to have Bryn Hall in studio with us.
It's good to be here, Ross. Good to be here,
good in pink too.
Oh, just thought I'd help out with the brand, so it's good to be here. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. You love pink, Chip.
I do. I'm a big fan of pink.
Yeah.
I might have to talk to Tomo. Tomo might have to make me a pink one.
And then you guys can talk in the morning to make sure you don't wear exactly the same thing, eh? Boys, that was a shock. It really was a shock, wasn't it? To see the way that performance went, to see a relative step backwards, Bryn.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, you've got to credit the Argentinians with how they performed. Look, I thought Carates around his exits and being able to get the kick receptions to be able to where we were able to catch the ball with Mark Talia really struggled to probably get out of our area. It was talked around with Razor and even the coaching staff after the game around getting out of our back fence. So I thought probably our exit area and being able to kick on our own terms was probably an improvement that we probably need to see moving forward. And then I think also, the counter-attack and the click attack from the Argentinians was outstanding on the weekend. There was 2 tries that they scored off that and were able to accumulate, 12 to 14 points off that. So, you talk around taking your opportunities. I thought those 2 areas were really good. And that wasn't, especially even in that Creevy's try, that very last pass, that last try, the 2 passes that went backwards and then able to execute under pressure. And then conversely for the All Blacks in that last 10 minutes, there were multiple areas of being able to try and nail your roles. So a lot of learnings, a lot of solutions for that group to move forward, but at the same time, the Argentinians, they thoroughly deserved that victory, I thought, on the weekend.
They were very strong. They came with intent. We knew they would. They did what we thought they would do, and it worked, which is probably the biggest frustration for the All Blacks.
I think there's elements, though, if you break the game up into quarters, 13 of the 22 kicks were in the first quarter, and we were up 20-8. The game was there. We just, for some reason, went away from it. And I think the reason we went away from it and the reason we couldn't kick on our terms is we weren't winning those collisions, probably for the back 60. They were big bodies, and we sort of, we've been reliant on probably Scott Barrett and Patrick against England, getting that gain line, and we've sort of spoken about Patrick in particular. Even if you use Auckland as an example, they tried to replicate the Blues game plan, but when you don't have those big bodies to get in behind, it's quite a hard game to play rugby, isn't it? If you're not on the front foot and you can't kick on your terms. So, and then I suppose the other area for me that, we probably haven't come accustomed to is in the last 20 minutes, five of the 15 penalties were given away in that last 20 minutes when the game's in the balance, and then obviously our set piece failed us in that last 20 minutes as well. So the beauty of it, the way I look at it, forever glass half full, Ross, we lost it, they didn't win it, I believe. I feel like, those 2 passes from World Rugby Player of the Year and Damien McKenzie that led to that try, I suppose changing up of the squad, did the balance get right in terms of being able to win those collisions time and time again to put us in the position. But at 20-8 up, you sort of expected the All Blacks to kick on, but I do have to acknowledge, I didn't give Argentina a chance, and I'll be honest with that, and I will congratulate their fans and their team for doing so, because what I saw against France was, very inconsistent, and you sort of didn't know what style they were going to play, but I thought Careres was a big point of difference. His game was the best he's probably had in a long time, but also I think their prep, the way they prepped, like knowing that the tap back, the crossfield kick, they would have seen the tap back a lot of the time. So positioning, because if he catches it, there's no one necessarily there to tackle him. So they've done their work, and they backed that prep, and it came off for them.
The tap back is one of those things, like it is a risk at a test level, isn't it?
But it's the same with TJ's kick.
Yeah.
They would have done, TJ's box kick, they would have done a lot of review, and they would have known that, okay, obviously the blockers aren't out wide enough. Like TJ's always taken those steps sideways. I remember prepping him, and you knew you had to come from a wider angle because of the left foot and the way he steps out versus like maybe a Bryn who sort of just goes straight away. So they'd done their work on that, and they got the rewards from it. That lumped pressure on pressure, and once pressure's a funny thing. You know, pressure is a funny. These are very skilled players that have performed through Super Rugby, and we think they're warranted of that All Black jersey. But it just shows when the pressure comes on, and if you haven't experienced those moments, it can be tough to come out of.
It is interesting if he has that thing that he does. The communication with your blocker, Bryn. When you're setting up for a kick like that, surely the first thing you're doing is communicating to the person protecting you. Is that the way it's supposed to go?
I feel like TJ would position them though.
Yeah,
like if he wasn't happy, he would have moved them. So it was obviously they were in the spot, but they'll make the necessary adjustments.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to that prep side. You know, when you see a trend of a halfback, whether it's a TJ or whoever else is in the world, you've got to be able to try and execute it. And to their credit, they were able to execute that and get to that left foot of TJ early on. And then if you look from that and then post that, you know, TJ doesn't get charged out from that. They make their necessary adjustments. And I think more so kicking on your terms and getting that caterpillar. You know, the solution might be moving forward now is that he might not be able to get out. You make it a little bit longer, so then you take those steps out and then you're able to execute that box kick. More so, correct. More so in the exit area. Now, it's a little bit different with the contestables, but more so for the longer kicks, that maybe the longer caterpillar that we saw against England might be the solution that we see move forward with the kicking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a game plan thing. Like, they obviously went in with a plan not to use it.
Which seems bizarre.
Yeah, and potentially, could have they changed it during the game because they weren't probably getting the breakdown they wanted to kick off, you know? Like, there's so many variables that go into a box kick. It's not all on TJ or those blockers as well. You know, like at the end of the day, you win collisions, you clean well, you'll be able to kick on your terms. You win collisions, you clean well, you'll be able to play your attacking structures on your terms. You win collisions, defensively, you can slow their ball, you can bring line speed. Like, it all comes back to winning that collision, and the stats show that we lost that battle.
And that's an important thing. If you look at all of the teams on the weekend, talk around gainline percentage, which is a big stat for us at the moment, we're last in the Rugby Championship. And I know it's a week. Look at on the weekend, 34% gainline for us, 42 for the Argentinians, 44 for the Aussies, and obviously 50 for the Boks. So winning collisions and winning that consistently every single time, whether that's through your exit, being able to kick on your own terms, it was a really important part when we were trying to exit. If you're going backwards, it gives the opportunity for the defensive team to do it on their terms. They can put more pressure, like we saw with TJ, or you can pressure the number 10 going for a contestable kick. So again, somehow, with the group forward pack that we have, we've got to be able to try and win the gain line percentage. Now, do you change the team? We do have, obviously, you look at Tamaiti Williams and Tossi in terms of big men that can carry. It might be a conversation that has to be open because the gain line percentage is probably one area, I think, not only in this series, but probably the last 6 to 12 months with the All Blacks that we're not consistently winning like we're seeing with those numbers, especially with the Springboks and what their percentages are.
The selections, to me, when I saw them on the Thursday, I thought were weird because there were a lack of ball-carrying options, certainly in comparison to what you see in international teams. Like, you don't see a lot of Tyrell Lomax or Ethan de Groot carrying the ball. So then you're looking at a guy like Artie who had 20 carries by himself, you know, and he's not big for a test forward. He's powerful, but he's not big for a test forward. Ethan Blackadder plays above his weight, I think, when he carries. He's not big for a test forward. You wonder whether that is where they need to maybe bulk this up. Like, what happened to Finau? What happened to the bigger guys? And if you're not going to carry bigger guys, why isn't there a power winger?
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to put in context the stats for people to understand. If we look at the Blues who won Super Rugby, they averaged just under 60%, not just trying to bring the Blues up. That 60%, and then the team that came last, the Waratahs, 32% average. So we're at 34%. Like, to be honest, 50% by the Springboks in international rugby is freakish.
Pretty good, yeah.
That's like 65-70% in Super Rugby, I would say.
Yep.
You know, like, that is very impressive. So 34% isn't the 32% the Waratahs face, but just showing the context of where, you know, the Springboks, everyone will say is the best in this competition now, which is fair enough. And I sort of just want to show people why we focus on one stat. Obviously, there's set piece and there's defence and stuff, but if you can't win that initial collision, you can't get your breakdown. Like, the carry is the most important thing to a breakdown. is winning that collision and getting through out the other side. So the breakdown, you can use one cleaner, ball's up, ball's gone, you kick on your terms and so forth. So it is one of the most critical stats that we lost on the weekend. We haven't lost it previously. We were good against England. That's why we got the result. That's a good English side. We don't become a bad side overnight, but that is, I would say, a key area that they'll be focused on is that collision area and making sure they win it.
And if you look at South Africa right now, with that kind of gainline percentage, the reason why they're able to attack so wide and it seems like it's so easy is because you're winning in the battle within the middle of the field. So you look at the edge attack now that we're seeing with the South Africans. So I question if they'll be able to do that at 34%. They might then have to revert back to maybe their box kicking game or the contestable games. And so that's an area that we've tried to go to. We saw that in the English series that we weren't able to get that gain line. What did we go to? We're able to go to a contestable game and we're actually able to get the ball back, which I probably felt on the weekend. We actually weren't able to get the contestable back and get that kind of that gain that we were able to get in the English series.
Yeah, I look at the box kick stats. There were 7 of them. 1 was got back, 2 were charged, and that's it. And then the contestables they did get back were the Damien McKenzie chip and chase. There was a kick across to a winger. So like they've had to go to those areas in order to do it. And I suppose that comes back to what you were saying earlier about where the box kick goes and how you set up to allow your wingers to actually get in the game.
But then there's also, how can you also gain momentum? You can go through your set piece. So you can go through a scrum period. We didn't see any scrums until the 60th minute. So it's probably an area.
It blows my mind.
It's crazy that there was actually a stat.
Well, we want that, don't we? Good ball handling.
Hey.
No, well, I mean, really.
We
want people don't want to see knock-ons. They want to see good ball handling.
Bring back the mark. Bring back the mark scrum.
But I'm imagining that the reason for that is that the All Blacks had 0% dominant tackles. So then you get no knock-ons, right? And then you have no scrums.
Dominant tackle's a hard one because I've always found it an interesting stat because what you would perceive sometimes a dominant tackle doesn't actually get coded as a dominant tackle.
Right.
So I'm not always
trust them.
I'm not always a big believer. And look, I wasn't a dominant tackler, so I actually never really looked at the stat when I played because I was more just get them to ground. But I always found it weird. Like I remember this hit Paddy did on Eben Etzebeth against the Stormers at Eden Park, like absolute monster hit, didn't get coded as a dominant tackle. I was like, have you seen that man that ran that ball? Like that is, even if you just stop him neutral, that should be a dominant tackle. But anyway, let it go.
Yeah.
Oh, well, one day.
But the Boks got 5% dominant tackles according to the stats.
Yeah, but because the Wallabies were fatigued, man. Like you can't attack when you're like Tony Brown has had a massive impact in terms of, and Sia Khaleesi said it after the game. He goes, he is really pushing us to test our skills and the way we play, and that's what it looked like. That was so intense, that first 30 minutes.
If you look at their four-pack now, Jip, their skill set under pressure to get those passes away, like we just weren't seeing that 12 months. So obviously Tony Brown's in there. He's obviously they're doing a lot of skill work in terms of being able to get the reps and obviously the preparation to be able to feel that like you do in a game. But when you can win collisions and you look at all their forwards,
by time,
100%. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to them being able to play on an edge or being able to be open and expansive. It's because they're winning those battles of being able to get over the advantage line. It's quick ball. You're giving the likes of Aransa, who scores that try, just being able to use his footwork.
But if you don't mark up around the breakdown, they'll take you through the middle.
Yeah.
She's a hard beast to defend. Look, I thought, like, for how hectic that first half was, I thought the Wallabies actually did well to stay in the fight defensively. I know they scored 3 tries, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. They had 8 entries, and the first time that the Australians got into that 22 was in the 38th minute. So 8 entries to 0 in the first 35 minutes. So they fatigued them in that first half.
Well, it's like then they got that first opportunity, and I think Michael Hooper said it. When they kicked to the corner, he goes, like, the Aussies actually looking all right for how many tackles they've had to make. He goes, they've just got to be able to hold on the ball, and Valentini knocked it on straight from that line out, and it's just like, it's so deflating to be straight back on defence. Anyway, I digress.
Look, Valentini's a good point because he's another example of Australia back a big man who's got the size to automatically get over that gain line because he's got it. The All Blacks don't have Scott Barrett or Tuipulotu. What do? Like when you look at the selection, considering those 2 guys are out, what is the best setup for this week to allow them to get over the gain line when you look at your pack selections?
Yeah, I think it's not even just pack selections. Like if you look at the lineup as well, I feel somehow you've got to get height in that loose forward trio. I don't know who comes into it. I also think in terms of dominance tackles, Sam Cane's in there for a reason. That's his game. His bread and butter is putting guys on their backside time and time again, which hopefully would free up and give energy to Artie. to allow him to be what we've, like he's doing a hell of a lot of work, Artie, both sides of the ball, everywhere. And that takes its toll. It doesn't allow him to have that, I suppose, gas in the tank to do what we've seen over the last few years as well. So just getting that balance of loose forwards is massive in terms of set piece, collisions, and working to the strengths.
So what does that look like for you? Just if you think of a Kane, are you thinking him at 6 or being able to be at 7?
I know he'd be
for Dalton.
Definitely, he's a 7. I don't know who it's for, but I think you've got to look at them as a 3. Okay, what are the strengths, and what are we trying to achieve? We said it last week. They know the game plan. The coaches know the game plan. They obviously went in with the game plan, and I think they've been quite open that it wasn't delivered. So they'll need to look at that. And I just think you look at when the pressure's on, especially last season as captain, how composed, he has lived the most pressure situation, I believe, Sam, and having him out on the field. I know he's running the water and stuff, but sometimes having him in the trenches could be hugely beneficial to a lot of these young players. And
if you probably look at the bench makeup on the weekend, and that's not to say these guys are going to get, you've got to give them opportunities, your likes of your Wallace TTs and your Josh Lord, just through injury, but having a Sam Cane possibly coming off the bench in that last 20, 30 minutes, it gives Dalton maybe the opportunity to be able to, I'm going out flat out for 50 to 60 minutes, then you can bring a Sam Cane, or being able to have that the other way.
I reckon you start him if you play him.
Yeah.
I don't think he's got, I think you've got to bruise them early. They'll be confident.
So then
somehow in that first 40, you've got to send the message that it's not going to be what you saw in Wellington,
And what about a 6-2 split? If you're looking for gainline dominance for 80 minutes.
Oh, absolutely.
Why is that seemingly off the cards to New Zealand teams when everybody else is doing it?
I don't think it's off the cards. I think, you saw it a number of times through Super Rugby. But also, I don't think it wasn't the reason we lost. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's that big a thing. But I think against South Africa, you're going to need a 6-2 split. There's no doubt. Look at the way they dismantled that Wallabies forward pack. Those are some good players in that Wallabies team. I don't want to say in awe, but man, that was just the South African performance.
I actually smiled watching it. It was actually an experience to watch how they were playing. I just think the brutality that forward pack has. We talk around the gainline percentage, but if you want to look at what the DNA of what that looks like, watch the South Africans.
They just want to get better.
Yeah.
As well. Even see after the game. Anyway, sorry, I'm going back to South Africa. That performance was just. I don't think Australia played that bad, except for up front.
Yeah.
Forwards, discipline. We said it.
Yep.
Discipline. Go to the corner.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can't give penalties away.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But just going back to what that will look like, if you're mentioning Sam Cane and you're going to play Artie, that leaves you with a big 6 really left over. So that would have to be most likely Samipeni Finau or
Jacobson.
Or Jacobson. So those are your options because you can't do much with the locks. You're at the point now with those two big guys.
Well, it depends where Paddy is at.
Yeah.
Is he? Well, Scott's definitely is Jace
Argentina
Ryan.
1, Argentina 2.
He's definitely back he's definitely out this week, and he's back for the Springboks. But I don't know where Paddy's at, and I'm not sure. He may be available, or they may, reassess whether he needs to have a crack this week.
I think
Darry was outstanding though.
He was. I think
apart from his Canterbury mouthguard.
Oh, you did say that on the WhatsApp chat.
It was so funny when the Blues put it up and you just saw black and red mouthguard. I was like, oh no.
Torn.
It's his home.
The confidence that I think you can say for the All Blacks, if you look at Mark Talia's try and you talk around lightning quick ball, that was a perfect example, I think, of what it actually looks like. If we can get over the advantage line, there actually are the players that are in there that can do that. If you look at that try, it's a perfect DNA of how we can be able to score points. It's been able to have not the understanding, but just more so the execution to be able to do that consistently over and over and over again. So,
and it's just understanding. We were 30-28 up with 13 to go. And that we put them in the field. We put them in the field position.
Yeah,
they didn't. It wasn't. There was no line speed pressure on those passes. We put them there. So it's not. I just hope we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No.
There doesn't need to be drastic changes. If anything, it just needs to be simplified.
For example, in the last 10 minutes, there was a not straight, 72nd minute, there was a scrum penalty from that. 74th minute, Kirby gets a breakdown penalty on the attacking side, defensive side, sorry, an overthrow on the 76th minute, and then a penalty in the 77th minute. So that's 6 minutes of play. You can sort that out pretty easily in terms of the conversations they'll be having behind closed doors. And an experience for those young guys coming on and understanding, right, this is what it looks like. How can we rectify that and find solutions for the next time I'm in that situation?
Certainly if you look at the cohesion of that bench, you can kind of see how things went that way. How many times have those guys played together in those combinations ever?
But you've got to give them opportunities, right? Like sometimes you've got to be able to go through some teething issues to be able to get the better outcome in a year's time. So they'll learn from that. And
I agree with that, but I don't think there's an expectation for All Black losses. In all fairness to the public, I think they've reacted pretty maturely. Like, it hasn't been as drastic as poor old Fozzie's treatment.
got some emails from that suggest otherwise.
Yeah, but see, that's an email. That's an email. It's not like they're posting it up. I don't know, maybe I'm not au fait with social media.
My feeling is that the frustration obviously comes from a good place. It's not hatred, it's frustration in seeing something.
You definitely want, that's our point of difference. We say it all the time. We want everyone to want us to win.
Yeah.
Like, we have to, like we can't start going, oh yeah, we can drop a couple. And I know the Springboks have done that and they've been successful, and that's all good, but
it's not the expectation.
I feel like they've changed their mojo around that a little bit. Like, I feel like they're just focused on what can we do to be better. Like, I don't even think they're looking out the window. No. They're just looking internally, and they seem like a team that just wants to absolutely dominate. Ruthlessly.
When you've got bodies like they've got, when you can say Peter Steph to Toy jump in at lock, we've got a hole there.
And he plays so well.
I mean, he is as good as any player in the world, and I think you can just throw him into another position, and he's got experience there, and he's a hell of a player, and you go, okay.
But I think it's like, Drip, you bring up a really good point about it's their intent to want to dominate. You can have all the players and you can have all the athletes internally within yourself, within that group as well. You can just see it. They want to be the world's best. They're doing that every single day, and you can see the intent of all of them, whether that's on attack or it's defensively as well. They're moving pretty smoothly at the moment, I reckon. Yeah,
well, that takes me to a question, which is going to be the question that we'll give the players sport ball to. Please send us an email, aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz, and also go into the comment section on YouTube. We'll find your questions. We've got a few of them this week. We'll try to get through as many as we can. This came from Steve Tate. Are we becoming too nice in our rugby? A bit of mongrel, niggle passion is essential to win. We don't have anyone getting under the skin of the opposition. I want to see someone thumping the table and getting passionate. And it made me think, where's Dane Coles? Where's Brodie Retallick? If you look at the last decade or so, there's always been a couple of those guys who just walk the line in a game. Do we have any of those guys right now? But in saying that, when you try to get under people's skin, sometimes it can work against you just as much. Like, I'm more of the, if you use Brodie as an example, he doesn't obliterate ribs to get under people's skin. He obliterates ribs because that's his job. And he wants to do that. Do you know what I mean? So there's a difference between trying to, like, that's the mongrel as well in it, though. Yeah, I know, but I think it's the, like I say, I just think I think we've got the athletes. I think we've got the team that can win. We know these coaches are proven to have success, but like anything, you guys always had your slip-ups against the Waratahs, and I'm not saying that that's accepted at international level. What I'm saying is, we don't need to hit the panic button oh, we don't have the athletes and we've got to change everything. We do. Patrick Tuipulotu can blast ribs. So can Scott, so can Tupo Sam Darry, outstanding. You know, there's enough there. I go back, 13 kicks, exited well, played our game plan, 20 minutes, 20-8. We had the game. We just went away from the game plan. I don't think he's questioning the commitment of the players or the passion of the players to win. Yeah, but I don't want to see someone smack the table. To me, that means you're out of control. I want to see someone focused on their job to be the very best version of themselves, time and time again. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Not trying to niggle someone or push them or hold them on the ground. It's a waste of time. You're just distracted. You're distracted. They're not distracted. That's my personal take on any of that sort of stuff. And most mental skills coaches will say the same. Whenever it's a perfect example. If you ever saw anybody having those kind of mannerisms, you'd think, right, he's off his game. And you'd almost want to go target him
for that first 5 minutes. So it might be, you know what, if he's doing that to you, you might just pull him at a ruck and then he ends up giving a yellow card. Because he's in the red. So it comes. Dane Coles is really good at.
That's his personality.
Exactly. I was just going to say it was his
You can't
personality.
create that. It's who he is.
It was his personality, and he didn't have to create it. He was just more so. That's him as a person, and he knew that. So, if anything, he lived that. So it was fine on that.
See, Mongrel
I kind of
to
feel
me,
like that's his point. It's that kind of personality helps a team get over the line.
But you're not selecting someone just to.
that's one person over how many years of All Black rugby?
Yeah.
Can we have another example?
Well, I think Brodie's a good example.
But he's not like Dane Cole.
An outstanding example.
He wasn't to the extent of
But
Dane
nah,
Coles.
like Dane's a unique beast. Like you're not going to recreate that.
It never went away from his game. It was never a detriment to his game. Sorry, there might be isolated situations where it might be, but not to an extent where it was going to cost you a test match.
But I would like to see us understand. Okay, Creevy's coming off the bench. He loves turnovers. Okay, I'd like to see him blasted early, not given the entries. To me, that's what I'd be like. They've done their work. They're on the go. They're getting in early, or you run at them, make them tackle. Same thing we always used to do to Pocock or Hooper, and and those sorts of actions, and getting straight up and back into position. Not any, I just think I would be concerned if we started just trying to be niggly. To me, that would be that would be concerning.
More questions. This one from Joe Kutsir in Cape Town, who is an AB supporter. So, Joe, thank you again for emailing. Do we have a problem with our defence, especially the back line, and how they go up and shift or don't shift with the opposition attack? It's so easy for teams, but the All Blacks attack struggles against the rush defence. So is it just a once-off, or is there an issue that is not being corrected?
You've got to be able to set early to be able to be dominant. So Scott Hansen actually talks around it in his press conference around our tackle actually wasn't too bad, but whenever we weren't set, then it's really, really hard. Like if you look on the weekend with the Argentinians, they actually came back down the short side quite a lot, whether they were able to get to the middle and kind of running like a 21 play. And Jip, whenever you're coming back to the short side, your first movement is you're actually going to be passive to then go try get up and have line speed. So I think identifying what's in front of you first, and if you can see it happening very, very early, then you can be set, and then the wingers know that people inside them are set because they're usually your tight forwards. Then you can get up and be able to put pressure on them. So I think that's one thing that the All Blacks will probably look at is where we set, how can we be set, how can we look faster? That's the solution, looking where the players are, and then from there, you're on your front foot, then you can get up to be able to try and make your tackles.
What's the 21 play?
So if we're going from one point of the sideline, so if there's like a line out that's starting on that point, you might hit one in the transition with the 12, for example, a ball carrier coming around for the forwards, so that's 2 rucks, and then you're switching back to the short side.
So Da Vinci Code, mate.
Yeah, that's what the 21 play would be.
Right.
So 31 would be 3 phases, 1 back.
Yeah.
And 11 would be hit straight back.
Right.
As an example.
Okay.
Really creative.
No, I actually haven't read the Da Vinci Code or watched the movie.
Well, it's a lot harder than that. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. I do think it's worth noting defensively. It depends what you deem dominance.
Yeah.
Okay, if you've got time, the expectation is double shoulders, driving them back, at least stacking them, holding them up, slowing it down so you can get it again. But dominance is also chopping and getting them straight to the deck at the point of contact and a hunt.
Yeah.
A hunt's just as good as a dominance because you're slowing the ball down to allow potentially the opportunity to be dominant.
Yep.
So sometimes we always look for the big hit, but that dominance in and around that chop is very, very valuable, if not more so.
Yeah.
We've got one here from Dan Frost. Love to
Frosty!
Hear your thoughts. You know Dan? You know Frosty?
No, I don't.
know Frosty.
But you knew.
Would love to hear your thoughts on Cortez Ratima's knock-on in the first Argentina test.
Text straight away. It's not a knock-on for me. Go watch Kalen Ponga yesterday. Same thing happened and they scored a try off it.
Yeah, different sport.
I know, but to me it should be the same ruling.
What is a knock-on?
I'm sure previously, if you bow it and kick it, it's never been called a knock-on.
I've seen such situations where that's been play on.
It happened to Cortez Ratima last year where he got away with it in Super Rugby and got the...
But I don't think it's away with it.
Yeah.
It hasn't touched the ground, it's touched you.
The ruling was around if you don't actually catch the ball properly and then it's why it's classed as a knock-on, right? Was that the interpretation?
Well, yeah, you've got to be in control of the ball before you drop it to your foot. But the rules say nothing about that. But rugby's rules are weird because you have the rules and then you've got the interpretations of the rules and there's like these separate documents that all seem to happen. So
I just don't think it's a knock-on.
A kick is an act made by intentionally hitting the ball with any part of the leg or foot except the heel, from the toe to the knee, but not including the knee. Now, he intentionally kicked it.
He did.
Did he intentionally drop it to kick it?
We're
No.
sounding like lawyers.
Yeah, I was just.
But you know what I mean? So I read that.
We're defence lawyers.
Jeez, we're really bad here, man. This is why we lost the test.
I just think gut reaction at the time. I was like, that should not be a knock-on. I said it instantly to you guys.
Yeah. So I thought that was the interesting part because what is the intentional bit? There's a bit.
Well, then it comes to
vagueness
ref interpretation. Doesn't it?
Yeah, and the ref was very good. I thought he was across the board. His communication was excellent.
Yep.
You know, particularly with things like the tackle that could have been a yellow card. Superb.
It's a running dialogue of obviously how the game's going. So I think for players as well, look, any time you get a good ref like that, we talked about Ben O'Keefe and I actually had him on the weekend, so it was great to have him. But it just helps when you've got a ref like that you can trust that he's going to make the right call.
Yeah, you love him because you went, oh, and you got a penalty out of it.
Hey, thanks for being able to comment on that, mate. Thanks for commenting on that.
How many halfbacks tripped over guys rolling out?
Mate,
it's an art, isn't it?
It's an art. It is. It gets rewarded.
Cortez did it on the weekend as well. Did it on the weekend as well.
Yeah, there was lots of that.
But you know, as players defensively, you know it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Like if you get yourself in that position.
What was him thinking though? You didn't even have the ball.
Oh mate, he got me pretty good.
I know.
If you look at, I don't know if you saw Falau's when he went dummy and went. I got absolutely smoked.
I saw that. That was a great clean out.
Gosh, it was a hell of a clean out.
I even commented on that. I was like, look at that clean out on Hall.
Yeah, it was a great. Yeah, he got me good on that one. So one for one on that one.
I want to go back to Cortez though, because I was surprised he wasn't starting. You know, obviously he came off a head knock, but I was very surprised he wasn't starting.
I'd say that's why.
Yeah.
It has to be like just not wanting to throw him out there in the at the start when it's full noise. I'm not too sure.
I actually looking back when the team got selected, and obviously just knowing Scott, I'm actually not surprised that
TJ was the starter though.
Correct.
Before he got injured.
Yeah.
And I think all the game management and all the, I guess, the understanding that you need as a 9, like TJ just has that, and it's a big ask to give that to a young 9, especially in a test match like that. So I'm actually not surprised that TJ was starting. So, and Cortez has been doing really well off the bench, and so you know it's a much easier way to be able to come off the bench for those 15-20 minutes. And like he showed against the English, he actually has that maturity, I think, to be able to have that leader and role coming off the bench.
But now, if you look at the Rugby Championship and the position they're in off the bat, the chance to give Cortez Ratima a start appears to have maybe disappeared unless they're willing to drop TJ, because they're now in a position where they have to win everything and they really can't afford, can they, to be mixing and matching and doing different things. They've got to get going.
It depends what they want.
Yeah.
Rod Kafer would have a start. The 9-10 Chiefs combo.
Does Rod know about your man love for his...
It's gone from Malcolm Marx, mate. You've moved on.
He just made me think. I was like, it's a fair point. You know, like you look at all the successful combinations over the history of rugby, normally they've played together at club level.
Yeah, but Chip,
it's different. Yes, I'm not saying it. I'm just saying maybe it would give more support to Damien. I don't know. They play a lot together. There is that element.
His skill sets appear to be good enough. Like he seems like a cool, calm customer.
Well, if you want to chuck him out, you put him out there. And obviously, we aren't privy to what's happening behind closed doors. So, if they think that he's ready, he'll start. You know.
They've proven that.
Yeah.
Like this coaching group has been quite ruthless in their approach. Like, they will put the team first in their selections and what they believe in.
And they trust him with not selecting Finlay Christie. So, you know, I don't think the gap in terms of like TJ being the number 1 starter and Cortez being second, I think, you know, on their day with whatever they think the best skill set is needed for their test match, they won't be able to be afraid to put Cortez out there.
How do you best prepare a young bench, Bryn, to do what it needs to do?
Well, they'll have the review of what they thought. Individually, they would have had their own review of what they thought around that game, and they'll know individually, like, you know, look, they'll know that in those situations they won't do that, but they'll talk about it. The coaches will be able to review that and say, like, look, what were you thinking here? How can we prepare you better in that space? But I think
Kerry Evans will be doing a lot of work with that young group off the bat.
That's actually a good point, actually, yeah.
I think a lot of it will be the mental stuff. It won't be about, like, they're there for a reason. They've done it. They've physically dominated. they've got there because they're good rugby players and they've performed, and no one argued about the squad, really. Everyone was like, oh, yeah, okay. So I think a lot of it will be, okay, well, what positive can we make out of this horrible situation? Because they'll be feeling terrible, as you would expect in an All Black jersey. And I think that will be probably the biggest growth in terms of their preparation and making sure that they understand how they responded to that pressure and what do they potentially need to put in place live that allows them to respond in a different way.
When you sit down with a person like Kerry Evans, what is the thing he's likely to be talking to them about? What's he drilling into their heads?
It'll be more about understanding what they went through and them articulating that, and then okay, making a plan of, okay, how could have you responded better? Like I always used to have, I use myself as an example, was before I went to a sports site, Mick Byrne was like, mate, you make one mistake, then you make 5 because you get so angry. And he was like, you've got to learn to drop a mistake. Just move on. And that was a big lesson for me. And I was like, oh, actually, so I purposely had this thing where I'd always put my hand up because it was like taking accountability and letting everyone else know, like, my bad. Whereas previous, I probably had just tried to hide away and go, shit, I'm going to have to fight my way out of this, and then make another one, and you make another. But whereas that little trigger was like a message to myself, but also a message around to everyone that my fault, next job. And it's those sorts of things that you, unfortunately, can only learn through making mistakes in front of everyone.
And is that the sports site comes over and taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, mate, let's have a chat?
Everyone will meet with them.
So everyone has like a half-hour booking
I'd say
or something?
So. So maybe
some
not
players,
the senior guys.
Some players don't need it because they've obviously got the
young guys.
You've got your trigger. So like Jip obviously talks about putting his hand up. You know, I had a slap on my leg that I was able to then be able to practice in training for years to be able to, when I got into the situation, I could just flush it. But you know, obviously we don't know what their preparation side is for those young guys coming through. But Kerry Evans will be talking around, you know, in the situation. You might need a trigger in terms of being able to just flush that. So, but
also putting yourself back there. Like I used to, like one of the biggest growths in my game, and potentially why I played my best rugby when theoretically I should have been aging, was visualization. You actually did less physical stuff, but you visualized yourself doing it, and it's such a powerful tool to take yourself back. You know, almost watch the clips, take yourself back, and go, okay, how could I respond? And you almost play out different scenarios. And then almost when you get back in that situation, I always took comfort when I did that. I would run out and I'd be like, you've played it, you've done it. You've already done it. Just go out there and play. You've seen it, you've executed it, just go do it.
You'd be so decisive in terms of like with their preparation and seeing it. So you think about a week, right? You get all your maps that are done early in part of the week. You've kind of almost visualised playing it out in those games, in this situation, where it would be on the field, what it's going to feel like, if it's involved around me, what that's going to feel like. And then again, you are human, you are going to make mistakes. So then when that trigger, whether it's Jip putting his hand up or a slap on the leg or whatever it may be for different players, you then have a tool to be able to get out of it. So then it's not a snowball effect and you can just be able to make one mistake, cool, you can go the next 20 minutes, going really, really well, might happen again, trigger again, and you're not having compounding errors in terms of being able to not execute under pressure.
I can't remember who we played, but just before COVID hit, played a team the week before, and part of my feedback was like, man, you just got bitched in the carry. Pretty much. That's. Am I allowed to say that?
Love the honesty.
Now.
Yeah, sorry. Block your ears, kids. But that was basically the feedback I got. So that whole week, all I visualised is actually I'd close my eyes and I'd visualise myself at a low body height and driving my legs through contact and getting out the other side ball placement. I just did it time and time again. And then I did obviously reps physically on a pad, like low key just, and played the Lions. And you go watch the carries, it's as you know, like it's, so I think you look at that 35%, mate, a lot of these sorts of skills with the mental skills and visualization and how you can prep your mind to know that you can dominate at 50% in every carry. And at least meet neutral if you don't. You're not going backwards, and you see that. But then you also, geez, you're getting a good look into our minds here. But then you also visualise when you get dominated. Okay, how are you going to respond?
Yeah.
How can you buy time for cleaners to get there? How can you get that ball placement so maybe it doesn't need to be clean and someone like Bryn can just pick it up and pass it?
And if you want to use it like in a team way, you can have like kind of what ifs. So like the what if scenario would be like we've got a yellow card or we're not getting what we want. We might have previewed that we want to maul the team, but we're not getting what we want out of there. What's a plan B? And so you're constantly thinking like, what's the next thing that you can do as a team? And so leaders are massive in and around that, being able to drive that and understanding that if we're in this, what's our solution to be able to try and rectify the things that we aren't getting what we need?
Let's talk a bit about the Aussies. Obviously, we've talked a bit about the Boks and just how spectacular they are looking right now. Did you see any places where the Aussies have made some movements forward? Bryn?
It was pretty tough to see some positives. I think one thing that we touched on earlier with them is their discipline. They had 14 penalties within the first 60 minutes, and look, like if you're just going to give a team, unfortunately, like the South Africans, that many times to be able to go to line out more, attack even now that they can through scrum strike, line out strikes, but then even phase play now with how they can attack wide and through the middle, they've got to try and rectify that. So. And then when they do get into the 22, they've got to be able to try and score points. So they had, like I said, 7 entries, but they had zero entries in the first 35 minutes, and the South Africans had 8, which they were able to score 21 points from. So like I said last week, their margin of error is so small, and the opportunities that they do have, like the Argentinians did on the weekend with those 2 counter-attack tries, they were able to score points off that. So they've got to try and win the physicality battle. Somehow, they've got to go to a 6-2 split on the bench maybe, and be able to try and stay with these South Africans in the physicality domain, especially defensively and on the attacking side as well.
I think the concern is up front. Like, the scrum was dominated, the maul was dominated. Same thing happened against Wales. We know they've got one of the best coaches in the world around those areas, and Mike Cron in there. But maybe there's too much information. I'm not quite sure, because the players are really, like, they're good players. But it just doesn't seem like they're going as one. They're not going as one in the maul, they're not going as one in the scrum. And that timing and connection's off, it feels, versus it actually being they can't scrum. Because at times it looks like that. They can't scrum or they can't defend a maul. But until they sort their discipline out, that doesn't put them in that 22 time and time again, and have a solution, particularly to a driving maul. You know, scrum's not as bad. The scrum had moments that it was solid. Teams will just kick to the corner. They just can't stop it.
Yeah. Discipline controls a lot of that. Yeah.
But they still need to find a solution to that physicality element. Had I just seen them play South Africa, I'd be like, well, shit, South Africa's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, like, but the fact that probably a B Welsh forward pack dominated them as well is probably the biggest concern. And it certainly will be with Joe Schmidt. Like, he loves his collision areas and making sure they dominate that. But I think that first 30 minutes dictated their ability to do that for the whole 80 minutes, like they were knackered. Again, I know it sounds so simple, and at times rugby is very simple. We just complicate it as players and coaches. Like, that breakdown and that
collision,
first initial hit will set your whole system up for success.
Yeah, and that system in South Africa is successful. I was just thinking about, like, you look at their playmakers when you've got, you know, obviously a really impressive young guy like Sasha Feinberg Ngonzulu, looking $1 million in his first year of rugby. You know, not the finished article, but damn, haven't been many guys who stepped into a role as well as he has this year.
Any 10 that has that kind of ball, you're going to look like that.
You're going to look $1 million, baby.
But in saying that, man, you give him more opportunities to be able to try and play on top of teams and use his skills, his footwork, his speed. There was one where Willie LaRue, I think, obviously could have passed on the outside, but you look at his injection to be able to get through that. But that's based around, like Chip always says it, through the forwards and the collision area to be able to then play on top of teams. But if they can get the likes of Arendse, you know, Colby, and even LaRue to an extent, and Creel, I thought Creel was outstanding on the weekend as well. We're seeing these outside backs in the South African teams being able to, like, penetrate and have defenders beat in 21, all these offloads. So we wanted to see it, but now we're seeing it to come into fruition now post that World Cup. They've got a lot better.
That Creel break's actually a good example of like, where Aussie are at maybe over trying. Like, he just cuts back, and all Wallaby jerseys are trying so hard to get across, thinking they're going to get on the outside, and he cuts back. And do you know what I mean? Like that's it. Like you can't question the effort of the Wallabies. Like especially, I go back to that first 30 minutes, man. It could have been a hell of a lot worse. And I'd say previous Wallaby teams it would have been. So they've got the heart. They've got the desire. It's now just sort of slowing down and making sure they just remain in their systems and calm and composed. That it doesn't give, I suppose, those easy chinks in the armour. Like Creel did well, don't get me wrong, but I think it was more over trying that allowed him that ability. And I think Tony Brown is also playing a part. It's not just the forward pack, like that back line. It's almost like baseball, in a way, to give an idea of like just go out there and play it, give it a crack. Like if you make a mistake, we can live with it. And I know they're good enough to fight back, and they're in a position to do that. But he's playing on that, and he's making the South Africans a formidable attacking side.
Yeah.
And like I was making jokes on our chat, sending goat pictures of Russie, and but you've got to acknowledge Russie. Like I know he wants to be first, and he's an innovator, and you know that's not to everyone's cup of tea, but wingers putting in the scrum, like he just makes you think about the game differently. He makes you think defensively, and we know if defenders are thinking, they're slow. There's he's a pretty impressive guy of who he's brought around him. Just bringing Tony Brown in, contacting him, saying, hey, and look at what it's done.
Well, look at the special.
Yeah,
the two pods in the line out. Innovating that,
Then they used
Stuff like
again.
that.
They had this is Tony Brown bread and butter. It's the same thing with 6 variations. So they did it again, and you think it's just going to be a maul, and they pop off down the side, and then there'll be another one that comes around the open, and that's what he did so well for when the Highlanders won in 2015. Is it always looked the same, but it was different.
And as a player, like you could,
it makes you hesitate.
The amount of analysis that Jip would have had to see, if you've got the same picture, but there's so many variations, and the conversations that you have to have within that unit, within that forward pack at that time. If you're not on the job and one guy's missing it, that move has the ability to be able to try.
And that is where your system is most important.
Correct.
Because you actually got to stop looking at them and going, okay, how connected are we?
Yep.
We've got to be able to react to whatever, because we can't
cover
do the
everything.
prep. They're not going to show us. There's going to be something different. So it's more than the week turns on, okay, let's look internal. And that's what I was sort of saying about the Springboks. I don't even know what they would review. I feel like they would just be like, this is who we are, this is our DNA, and this is what we're about.
Double down.
Well, they're going through them. Like you just look at the antenna in that line out maul. I'm not a forward, but you just see the way that they are hitting those mauls and how
you watch the
they're
trigger
intense.
at scrum time.
Oh man.
The trigger, like they just get thrown in, and it's almost like the Wallabies absorb it. It's just like from the get-go.
How does that work? How does the trigger work?
So they were going from the number 8. So now you've got to have not now, but you're always supposed to, but they police this rule a lot more, as the hooker's foot, break foot as they call it, has to be up. And basically what they say is when you go down, the opposition should be able to walk away and you stay in that position. So the hookers they need to be able to sort of hold that weight, otherwise they'll get pinged. They'll slowly move that foot back as they go through the core, but they generate a lot of the power from number 8 shoulders off, and crouch, bind, and then they just get if you get the timing wrong, it's horrible, but they're very consistent. And basically, when it's bomb, all shoulders are connected to backsides, so like that transition of power, you could slingshot them in, and if the 8 shoulders aren't connected, it'll be terrible. But you watch the South Africans, man, it is like a slingshot of, well, from my point of view, it's beautiful to watch.
Yeah. I'd like to go back to that line-out thing again, because it looked really simple, but I'm imagining it's complicated, because we've seen, throwing to a second pot before, but generally the person's on the ground.
But also, if you watch it, that overhead camera, like the intricacies of it was pretty critical. Is, say they catch... What am I doing?
Look at the camera, mate. Look at the camera.
Felt like we're just like talking to each other. Sorry. But they go up there, and if you just watch, Etzebeth he steps out of the line out, so that because it has to go backwards.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The pass has to go backwards. So there's that little step.
But it has to be a small step because you're not allowed to exit the line out.
Yeah, because you can't exit the line out. So they did it so well, like you didn't see the offset, Because normally you watch for that defensively. If you can see them offset, you sort of know something's happening. But as they almost watch the ball, and as they're watching the ball, they're offsetting then. And the lifters almost move them. Like it is, like that detail is...
Preparation-wise, though.
Is a lot harder to do than you think. And you see it even the first time when they scored with Khaleesi is like everyone's rushing to get the driving maul where that pot is, which allows easy access there. But then the second time they did it, everyone waited for there, and then they went down.
The front,
you know, like
hill.
it's it's simple, but what's that quote? If it reads easy, it rode hard. You know, like it looks easy,
Right.
but the work that whoever came up with it, we're assuming Tony Brown, but I'm sure it's some of the players as well. There would have been so much thought and vision that went into that one. And there's nothing better when you put that time in and it comes off for a try. There is
Special
just
day.
nothing better.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's have a look at this weekend then. Can you see anything changing in Perth? I suppose first and foremost.
No.
And it's
Even
not even...
if they're
It's not,
disciplined, I don't see it changing.
it's not even been a home game.
Yeah.
Like if you look on the weekend in Brisbane, it looked like it was a South African home game.
Yeah.
So you'd have to think they're going to get more people that are going to be there in Perth.
Plenty in Perth.
So,
yeah.
But I think the discipline is a big thing. The more times that they don't let the South Africans inside to the 22, it gives them a chance to be able to then not go into those specials that we just touched on, to be able to then go into the 22 where they can use their big men and score points. And then conversely, they need to take their opportunities when they get them, if they are going to have any, because they didn't have any in that first half. So
I just think that balance of attack as well. You know, maybe using contestals a little bit more, or they played a lot when they had the ball and they were already tired. So somehow trying to work out, you know, in between those 40s, not playing too much.
they do have Jake Gordon for that as well.
Yeah, so I think there's an element of that, but then also they need to start with the ball. They need to try and fatigue the Springboks to allow them to have that dominance late in the game. So there's a lot reliant on the discipline to not piggyback them up the field, but the discipline to hold the ball early.
Well, let's go to the All Blacks Argentina game. We're going from the graveyard in Wellington to the penthouse in Auckland, where they look down upon and win everything. It leaves them in a better place to some degree.
Yeah, look, I think we get a better performance, and I think Eden Park as well. There's obviously a great field that you have been in that stadium, but that doesn't win the Test match. But the areas that we've touched on that they need to be better on, I think we'll see a better performance. And all the messages coming out from Scott Hansen and Razor was big around owning it. So you'd have to think in that group they'll own it collectively as players, as coaches, as leaders, and I think we'll see a better performance, a more stern and kind of hungry, more like a ruthless All Black team, especially in the physicality area. You'd have to think it's going to be a lot more physical for us, and our intent to be better.
I don't think there needs to be massive changes. I'll go back to the 20-8, 20 minutes. They've got enough there to show them if they play a certain style, they'll win. I think they'll win.
And to the teams? I mean, that's the game plan to the team. You think that they might just give them another chance to go?
I think knowing Razor and how he is in the past, he will give guys the opportunity. He'll give guys that he trusts in big moments, and he'll be wanting to be able to
He's sort of already
give
come
those
out
guys.
and supported Damien.
Yeah.
He sort of said, like, Damien, it's, you know, he did a lot of great things, and there's work-ons like all of us, and you sort of get the feeling that he's going to give opportunities. But I mean, you've got to expect some change, especially if someone like Paddy's fit and ready to go.
Yeah.
And Caleb Clark, do you think there'll be a change out wide? Obviously, Will Jordan has had a week.
Yeah, you'd have to think, well, definitely.
You reckon on the wing?
Well, I was surprised he went there.
Yeah, me too.
It looks like you sort of convinced me that it was going to be a, straight up. He's going to 15, but I was right again. But that's all right.
Yeah, that's what you were. Yeah, no, you were.
But I'd say he looks like he'll go on the wing.
I love the intensity of Test match time.
Oh yeah.
In the WhatsApp groups, on the field.
Jeez, I wasn't getting any responses from you during the South African game.
I wasn't there, mate.
I was just like,
I was
am I the only code head here?
recorded it and watched it later.
Jeez, I was in awe of Russie. I was like, Russie!
Well, thank you all very much for joining us once again on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. And congratulations to Steve Tate, who got the Players Sport Gilbert Ball. We'll see you again next week. Keep on sending through those emails, aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz, and get into the YouTube comments section as well. Intensity is up. Rugby Championship is on. So, boys, thanks. Renee, great to have you in here.
Oh,
Great to
so
be back,
good.
lads.
Yeah.
Great to be back.
Especially in Jipper's favourite colour.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, you have said you do love pink, Jip.
I
so
love
thought I'd,
pink.
come on and
Love pink.
give a bit of flair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See if Eden Park and Barfoots can come up with something.
I'm sure we can sort something out. Right, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who helps us get the show to air. Mā te wā.